Welcome to Youth Corner. I'm Ibrahim Rahman. This is the friendly chat show for the youth, a place to talk about what you do and recognise your achievements, share your experiences and inspiring stories, and discuss topics that are important to you. Introducing my next guest, he is a spoken word poet born and raised in London. He's also an activist and community worker and has volunteered for various charities in the UK. Joining me at the Youth Corner today, it's Mizan Rahman. Welcome to the show, Mizan.
Thank you very much for having me.
How are you today?
I'm okay. Yes, it's been a good day so far. Alhamdulillah.
Fantastic. Now, stage name, Mizan the Poet. Who came up with that?
I came up with it purely because of the fact that, my full name is Mizan Rahman, but my people at home call me Mizan.
And just to interrupt, just to let you know, we're not brothers.
Yeah, we're not brothers. We're not brothers or related in any way. We're just good friends, inshallah.
Brother from another mother.
Yeah, brother from another mother. So basically, my cousins and my family at home call me Mizan. So that's basically the name that I'm known by. And to be honest with you, I just couldn't be bothered to come up with a stage name, so I just came up with Mizan the Poet. There's a lot of other people who do the same thing. There's another spoken word artist whose name is George the Poet. Mo rhymes Muhammad the Poet. You know, there's one called The Poet. So it's just like we just can't be bothered to think of names. So Mizan the Poet, that's how it came about.
And that's how it has been ever since. So
yeah.
Fantastic. So let's talk about your journey through poetry.
Yeah.
How did it all start?
Wow, you're going back. You know, there's several reference points that I can use. I guess my main interest in poetry started around about 10 years ago. Yeah, about 10 years ago when I started hanging around a lot of young Muslims who are into creativity and rap. So there was this young kind of burgeoning Muslim rap scene in London at the moment, around about that time, around about 2006 onwards. So you had groups like Mecca to Medina, and then you had some other groups as well who are rappers as well, who were trying to use the platform of Mecca to Medina to kind of promote their messages through rap. So I was hanging around with these guys. And that kind of sparked my interest in using creativity as well. So it was through them and my interest in what they were doing that I got introduced to spoken word poetry. Because I couldn't rap, but I could really get into spoken word poetry. So that's where I kind of invested my time in and gained some sort of an interest in, actually.
That's really interesting. So, as you just mentioned, you particularly specialise in spoken word poetry. But tell our viewers, what is the difference between spoken word poetry and just standard poetry?
Standard. I mean, spoken word is basically just performance poetry. Basically, people, write a poem and then they get up and then they perform it. That's basically spoken word poetry. And then you have your standard poetry, which is, prose and, all these other kind of stuff, which were mainly written to be read on stage, or read, or even basically read in a book. So, there's different types of poetry, but spoken word is the type of poetry that you would call when you are required to perform it live on stage.
Interesting. Yeah. So that's what your work revolves around, live performances. So and you performed in many events already. So tell us a few.
We met at the Everyday Muslim event last year. So that's what I performed. I recited a poem there. I'm a part of a collective called Hope and Mic, which we have an open mic night every last Friday of the month, where we raise money for charity. So I performed there, or basically I help out there as well. Other events, it could be other, open mic nights in London, spoken word events in London. So the last one that I performed in was yesterday for an event organizer called TKO Entertainment. They had their poetry night yesterday, so I performed there. So there's different types, and charity gigs as well, charity dinners, and I also have YouTube videos as well. So just using all the platforms, really.
Wow, you certainly get around there, don't you?
Thank you.
Brilliant, good stuff. Now I'm going to put you on the spot here. I want to do some improvisation with you. So we're going to do a poem, and we're going to do this live. Let's call it a rap battle. Okay.
Okay.
Let's see how this goes off. Okay. So I'm going to start it off. Okay. My name's Ibrahim, and this is Mizan.
Yeah. Okay, so again, my name's Ibrahim and this is Mizan.
Okay, that went well. That started off well.
We share the same surname called Rahman.
We are going back to London. That was terrible. I think we should just stop there.
I think you want to stop there.
This isn't working well.
This isn't working well. Completely improvised. But I think the Mizan and the Rahman kind of went well. So it was alright.
No one calls it London here, do they? I've never heard.
No one calls it land. But some urban people do. They like Landan, Landan. That's how they call it. But yeah, okay, cool. Let's just end that right there.
Yeah, let's end it right there. That didn't go well. Oh dear. Anyway, let's move on to education now.
Okay.
Much more serious things. Well, maybe not too serious, but anyway, let's look at GCSEs, A level, and your degree. So, how did that all go? And how was poetry involved during that period as well?
Poetry was in a way it was. But not.
Was there any kind of creative writing involved during that period?
Creative writing at all wasn't involved in that.
Right.
Basically, my education, my years in education weren't really that good. So I didn't do that well in GCSEs. I went to college, done a foundation course in business studies, then intermediate course in business studies, and then I decided to drop that and then do IT. So I passed my ITs, and then I went to computers. Then I went to University of Westminster, where I done computer science. I passed the degree, but it was difficult. The whole phase of my life during that period was very difficult due to certain external factors. I was being bullied in school, all those kind of things. Socially, wasn't really that active as well. I was a very antisocial person, so there was a lot of things there that created obstacles to me getting a decent education. But one thing that was a big obstacle for me was I was disillusioned by what I was learning as well. Because when you're going through school, you do your GCSEs, you do your math, science, English, and graphics design, and IT, and religious studies or whatever it is that they do now. At that point in time, I remember when I was starting to do my GCSEs, and there was a lot of, you're looking at 97, 98. There was a lot of media attention around Iraq and Bill Clinton and all that kind of stuff, and and I remember that this was affecting people's lives, like in terms of what goes on politically affects people and their lives, and I remember thinking, like, why aren't we taught this in school? Like, why don't we have a political education in school? And I remember being very disillusioned by what I was learning in school, because it wasn't satisfying my appetite for a political education and wanting to understand what was going on around the world. So even in my teenage years, like when I was doing my GCSEs, even though I was going through other factors that basically stopped me from basically aspiring higher in my GCSEs, I always had that disillusionment as well. I was disillusioned with that. That carried on into college as well.
Right.
Because I went to college around about the year 2000. That's when I started, and then politically as well, you had the second Intifada, etc., going on in the news, and I remember that I was disillusioned as well, like in terms of what is going on in that situation, and you're not really taught these things in college. It wasn't really until university where I decided to get myself a political education, and I did that by reading books. But so in terms of like formally educate, the year through education that were very difficult, I would still say, obviously, for anyone, do it, pass your exams, make sure you do well. And if you're facing any obstacles, don't give up, just keep on going. Things will get better. But for me, because of my circumstances, it was very difficult, but I passed, and then it was only while I passed my GCSEs, but I realized that, and I'd done not my GCSEs, my degree in IT. Yeah. When I passed my degree in IT, I realized that I did nothing. I didn't want to do anything with IT, to be honest with you. So I went down the charitable sector. In terms of the poetry, like I said, at that phase, I wasn't really writing. Right. But hip-hop music helped sustain me at that time. So I'm going to be honest, I was listening to a lot of Tupac back then. So his stuff it helped me get through that kind of phase, because a lot of the messages that he was coming out with, in terms of him being against the world, and rap being a form of protest, it was something that I could kind of
so it had a big influence on you.
Yeah, it did. Obviously, I kind of went down the creative route, and I cannot kind of discard the fact that my introduction to hip hop kind of helped that phase as well.
It's interesting. Now, I just want to go back to, you mentioned about IT. That's what you studied at University of Westminster. So why did you decide to study that? And then obviously you moved away from that. You moved into the community sector, which is what you're doing now. But how did that all start then? So
I went into IT thinking, because in college, when I done IT in college, I had a great time, to be honest with you, when I done IT in college. So I'm thinking, okay, we're just gonna, let's do IT in university. And but one of the things that I hated about one aspect of the module of IT that I hated in college was the whole kind of programming side of things. So when I went into university, I thought, okay, you know what, we'll do a little bit of programming, but we can do other stuff. But that was the main focus, and that really kind of made me wonder, like, made me think, and made me grow dislike of IT, because I really wasn't the programming type. I really couldn't envision myself sitting in front of a computer for 5 or 6 hours doing programming
you look like
language.
maybe someone who might know a bit of JavaScript, no?
Oh God, I hated Java. Oh my God, I hated JavaScript and C++. I did those modules and I passed, but I remember just detesting them. It just wasn't for me. It just wasn't for me.
Fair enough. I mean, some things just you might study something, it might work out for you.
Yeah.
And there might be a subject that you do, and it just wasn't for me really.
So when I graduated, I did get a pass, so I graduated, even though it was very difficult. I realized that this is not something what I wanted to do. I thought I wanted to do IT, but I didn't. And that period was very difficult because I didn't know what I want to do. Like, where do I go in life? Those kind of questions started creeping up. So I decided to volunteer for a lot of charities and things like that. So my interest in the charitable sector came in via these volunteering kind of roles that I had. And when I started the volunteer, it was around about 2007, 2008. So the atmosphere was getting really politicized as well due to what was going on.
Now I just want to move on a bit.
Yeah.
Because now obviously you became a lot more active with community, where you got into activism.
Yeah.
So you volunteered with lots of big charities in the UK.
Yeah.
And who did you work with? And what did you do for them? And why did you work with them?
Well, basically, like, I started off. When you volunteer for charities, like humanitarian charities, what they normally start off doing is you get off leafleting, creating awareness, whatever. But one of the big charities at that point in time, and it's still around now, that I was volunteering for was the Muslim Youth Helpline. They provide basically a youth counselling service for young Muslims who are going through, troubled times.
Right.
And I remember my shift that I switched shifts. I'd have different days, but we would require to do 3 hours a week on the phone. So I did Sundays, I think from 6 till 9, and then I moved over to Fridays, 6 till 9. And I did that for about 5 years. And at that point in time, when I started to volunteer for the Muslim Youth Helpline, I had just graduated. So I was looking for a job. And it was around about that time when I was looking for a job that the CEO of that time, he basically told me about an organization called Sirat. Which wasn't like the graphics place, or the one that's the one everyone thinks. That's one I thought as well when I first heard about it.
It's quite cool, actually.
Yeah,
good stuff.
Yeah, but the organization that I'm referring to was a Muslim prison mentoring project.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So tell us very briefly about what's involved in this organization.
Well, basically, I was the office manager for this organization, and what it entailed was we were providing religious mentoring services for Muslims who were arrested under the Terrorism Act, and using religion, not in spite of religion, using the Quran and Sunnah to basically use them as a reference point to help these Muslims integrate back into society. That's what we were doing.
Very interesting indeed. So just before we move on to your section about giving advice to the youth, so what kind of challenges did you face? Or are still facing perhaps, with your work in activism?
A lot of challenges. Obviously, because of my experiences before, like I said, I was being bullied and stuff like that. So I got emotional kind of challenges as well, dealing with the lack of confidence and all these other things. But because of those experiences, I'm also trying to catch up because I know what I missed out on. Do you understand?
Right.
So because of these things, there's a lot of things that I didn't do, and now I'm trying to catch up. In terms of my political activism, I do a lot of talks. My kind of political kind of opinions and my political opinions, they come out via my poetry. So sometimes people say that they're a bit worried in terms of the political atmosphere that we're living in today. There's a lot of things going on in terms of government, in terms of just general Muslim political activism. So just basically just trying to make, family members and ones that you're close to understand why you do it is a bit of a challenge. And obviously then you have some other challenges as well, with the state, etc., etc. But with the kind of spoken word, there are also additional challenges as well. Like, for example, you are putting your hat in the ring with some of the best lyricists in the country, so you got to make sure that your lyricism is on point. So that requires constant learning, constant reading. Make sure your vocabulary is on point. Make sure you're writing as well. But at the same time, as a spoken word artist, you also have to market yourself. So you have to. I'm using the social media all the time. When I come up with videos, I make sure that I basically put them on my social media, do the paid advertising, tweet every day for 2 or 3 hours a day for at least that week when that video comes out. So that's a challenge because you have to put time into this if you want to make it.
Absolutely. That's great. So just moving on now. So for our younger viewers watching, particularly those interested in what you've been doing, what advice would you give them? Is there any particular tips? Particularly those who, let's say, they want to get into careers. So you mentioned a lot about spoken word poetry. So that obviously works on public speaking. That's a very important attribute to have, isn't it? So where would you go from there? Just very briefly.
Yeah, I would say for the young viewers that want to get into creativity and spoken word or other forms of creativity, don't give up. Keep on going. Keep on. I would say, what we need out there is quality, not quantity. Quality. So make sure you work on your craft. Make sure you work on your lyricism, and make sure you keep on writing. The way I would go about doing this is make sure you're reading as well. And I think for young people, especially for young Muslims who are great getting into creativity, poetry, rap, whatever, there is this added kind of emphasis on politics as well. So make sure that you are politically in tune with what's going on around the world. And you can do that via reading, listening to lectures, and just keep on going and keep on performing, keep on writing, and you'll be all right.
Brilliant, great advice. Thank you, Mizan. So, come towards the end of the show now. Let's hear one of your poems. Have you got one that you can recite to us?
Okay. Yeah, I've got one I can recite to you. This one's called Innocence Lost. Here goes. They say that the eye is a window to the soul, where we should see the rays of the sun streaking when smiles are beaming, but in his eyes, I see happiness bleeding. His neck's choked in so much anger, it's as if the pulse of his lifeline stopped bleeping. Being only 5 years of age, his body being unable to contain the level of his rage has removed all the innocence from his face as he struggles to see the light, because confusion lies where hope died. In a world where he's too young to drink a sip of wine, too young to be embraced by a wife, too young to ride his first mountain bike, means that he should also be too young to know what domestic violence feels like. But has grown accustomed to the impending screams that follow when he hears the rattling of his father's keys through the door, making mercy rendered by pain, as his house is a place where love doesn't enter. Yet he still prays for change, making hate reign supreme, giving peace no concessions, leaving him to go for a one-on-one counseling session with depression, because misery loves the company of those seeking the assistance of the heavenly kind. Now that bloodied scenes of his mum start to rupture his mind, scenes where he can point out the perpetrator, but his inability to help results in him pointing the finger back at himself. The mantle of self-blame, shattering his world with an earthquake, life's just given this 5-year-old a first-hand lesson in self-hate, erasing his hopes and dreams, completely rubbed out by low self-esteem, unwilling to make him see the brighter side of life because relatively his worldview's been distorted negatively, thinking women are fine to hit with a belt as a whip, when we know that's not part of a relationship, but that's simply not fair. For him to learn, he needs to see something in between his parents that's simply not there. Love, being the missing ingredient, instill the process of self-loathing that occasionally comes out in antisocial behavior, sparking the need to control but not console him. So loving him, they haven't been formally introduced. Because what he thinks of love is actually a constant stream of child abuse. Putting him in a desperate need of a swift talking to by his tender age means that nobody really knows what he's going through. Raw emotions, destroying his body, sat in between the four walls of his living room, representing life's closed doors that need to be broken by some form of outside intervention before the coming of a day when he looks at the mirror and sees his own father's reflection. Thank you.
Wow, that was fantastic, brilliant. And
Thank you very much.
On that note, we've come to the end of the show, sadly. But many thanks to Mizan Rahman, aka Mizan the Poet, and for joining us here today. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you very much.
And don't forget, if you'd like to also be a guest on Youth Corner, do get in touch. The email address is on the screen now. It's youthcorner@lb24.tv. Until next time, I've been Ibrahim Rahman. It's goodbye for now.
Bye.